in the Sutra of Saddharma Pundarika, it says, though I proclaim nirvana, yet it is not real extinction. All existence from the beginning is ever of nirvana nature. When a son of Buddha has fulfilled his cause, in the world to come, he becomes the Buddha. But all these world honored ones proclaim the one vehicle law, converting numberless creatures to enter the Buddha way. If there are any beings who have met the former Buddhas, if having heard the law, they have given donations, if they have kept the commandment and being persevering, being assiders, meditative and wise, having kept these various ways of happiness and virtue. Such beings as these have all attained the Buddha way. This is Saddharma Sutra. It is one vehicle, which is a Buddha vehicle. As you know, there are three vehicles in this world. Hinayana, Mahayana, this yana is a vehicle or teachings. And Ikayana Buddhism. Hinayana Buddhism is still existed in southern Asian country, Ceylon, Burma, Thailand, in those countries. And the Mahayana teaching, that is the teaching of Bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas, which means enlightened beings. Logically, everything in this world is enlightened from the beginning. That is the teaching of Mahayana Buddhism. Maha is a big, large vehicle. Or vehicle is the cart or means of transportation on the sea. While on the land is okay. That is a cart or ships. All are vehicles. So, big vehicle, that is Mahayana. So, the teaching Buddhism in China and Korea and Japan, some of in this country are the big vehicle. Big means not the individual enlightenment. The worldly enlightenment. So many people can be saved or can attain to the Buddhahood or to the enlightenment at the same time. That's why it is not a small cart or a small vehicle. It must be a big universal vehicle. that is a big vehicle, Mahayana. And the other one, last one, is Ikayana. Ikayana means one vehicle. There is no more small, or neither large, not small nor large. It is only one vehicle exists in the whole universe. That is a Buddha vehicle. Buddha is an enlightened person or awakened person. Everything in this world is enlightened or awakened. That is a point of point of view of the Buddha's point of view. So, in this teaching, everything is enlightened from the beginning. So, there is no difference between things and things, or this person and that person. All are Buddha. Plant is also the Buddha. Flowers, everything is from the beginning, ever of the Buddha nature, or nirvana nature, or enlightened nature. That is the Ikayana teaching. So that is a typical sutra is this. This is a Saddharma Pundalika Sutra. This is Buddha's last teaching. When the Buddha was 72, he started to proclaim this teaching, and he was through all this teaching when just a little before 80, when he entered the Nirvana. He took 8 years to taught this sutra. So this is very profound. The people, if the people have conceited mind, never understand this kind of sutra. So when Buddha started this sutra, among the listener, 5,000 bhikkhu and bhikshuni, that is a woman bhikkhu, and upasaka and upasika, laymen and laywomen, stood up and retired from that place. So I think somewhere is here, this one. What pages I 43. It says when he, that the Buddha, had thus spoken, in the assembly some 5,000 bhikshus, bhikkhunishus, upasikas, and upasakas straightway rose from their seat and saluting the Buddha withdrew. Because they couldn't understand this sutra is too high for them. Because they hated, those people hated suffering. And the purpose of the Buddha's teaching was the making the people to be free, no? Being free themselves from attachment and suffering. But Buddha said, the being free from suffering is not enlightenment. No? Man should be free from false food. No, false food. That is more important. Because suffering is the only concept. People are afraid of their concept of suffering. No? Suffering is an illusion. So no one can possess suffering. There is no suffering in your mind or in your body anywhere, because suffering is only the feeling. It is only concept of feeling. This concept of feeling allies with the concept of happiness. There is no concept of suffering without the concept of happiness. One concept never be arising. All human concept arises correlatively with the opposite idea. For instance, the concept of East arises at the same time with the concept of West. Concept of I does not arise by itself without concept of others. That is causation, Buddhist, interdependent causation. But realistic people have a realistic idea in which people, everything exists by itself. That is very foolish and dogmatism. So, nothing can exist alone by itself. Everything, arises with other things. When this exists, that exists. This thing cannot, exist by itself, alone, without other, things. So no one, even human beings, no one can exist alone in this world without other, person or other things. For instance, this flower cannot exist by itself without this pot, without this table, without this floor, without this, the earth, or without sunlight, without air, without water. Everything is helping each other. That is, that's the world of causation, dependent causation. But the realistic people always think everything exists by itself. This plant exists by itself, without any other things, without knower, without observer. That is, very dogmatic, unreasonable point of view. Therefore, suffering does not exist by itself without a concept of happiness. No? And suffering is a concept. It is not actual being. That's why we call it illusion. That the plant is illusion. Because your understanding of plant is your concept. You imagine this figure this same aspect of this plant in your mind. That is a mental image of this plant. Therefore, every one of you have a different images of this plant. The man sitting in this side and the man sitting in this side has seeing this same plant, from the different directions. So its shape is different and the color is different. But the color is individual human sensation. So nature is a human sensation or understanding. Therefore, it belongs to human mind. It has no color, no nature, no aspect, no activities, no values, no appearances, no characteristics, no substance, no self-existence. Therefore, it is called empty. It is shunyata. No one can grasp it. No one can obtain it. So it is beyond human understanding. But most of people, understand it. Why? They understand this is it. This is, this exists. This exists by itself, independently. So I can see it. I can touch it. And that is human, the ordinary way of understanding. But that is very, very unreasonable point of view. Lack of wisdom, lack of reason. So, we must understand this. We must understand this plant as it is. Just, it is like that. It is like. So, what is as it is? It has no self-existence, no self-nature, no self-substance, no self-characteristics, no self-activities, no self-value, no self-nature. So we cannot grasp it, we cannot understand it, we cannot explain it to others. That is a very basic Buddhist philosophy. But the human mind is always realistic, like that. The plant exists by itself, flower exists by itself, everything exists by itself. This kind of realistic point of view is very common in the human world. And also, human mind are very, very much, very, dualistic. What is dualism? Dualism is this. Everything has two kinds of nature. The one is affirmative nature. The other is negative nature. When person wish to affirm something, he must have a negative standpoint. Otherwise, he cannot affirm anything. And if he wish to negate something, he may need, the very concrete affirmative standpoint. Otherwise, he cannot negate anything. Therefore, negation and affirmation are same, false standpoint. But the people do not know that. For instance, this flower is beautiful. this flower has beauty in it. But some people say, no, it is not beautiful, it is ugly. No? That is, the private or personal feeling. So we shouldn't negate other. When we negate others' opinion, he must or I must have a concrete own dogma or concrete standpoint. Otherwise, I cannot negate others' opinion or way of understanding. So we shouldn't affirm or negate anything. So we must be our mind must be quite free from anything. That is important. Now, we shouldn't take any affirmative, concrete standpoint or negative standpoint. Negation and affirmation both are false view, dogmatism. We must be free from anything. That is the doctrine of a middle path, or doctrine of suchness, doctrine of nirvana. So, we must take this free mental state. So, I explained this Ikayanan Sutra. That is a sutra, yes. But it is very difficult, or it is next, it's the impossible. It is impossible to understand it by the human, with the human mind. Because human understanding is always conceptual understanding. Conceptual understanding is not real understanding. Therefore, people cannot understand anything, not only this sutra. This plant also, this flower is also, this statue is also. Even themselves, each one of himself, it is beyond his understanding. So understanding is always like this. It is false and very deceptive, deceptive, and it is a very fallacy, the false. Very delusive. So, we must understand what is the human understanding. We must know the true nature of human understanding. When we understand that everything is beyond our understanding, we understand that we understand, but we do not attach to our own understanding. Because understanding is only conceptual, making a concept in our mind. It is a mental image, that's all. Therefore, it is not real, but not unreal. Not the truth, not untruth, because there is no such things. Illusion is not real, not true. It doesn't exist from the beginning. Only, ignorant people make an illusion in their mind temporarily, just like mist in the air, or rainbow in the sky. Rainbow is the only reflection of the ray. So when you move, rainbow moves, like this. So it doesn't exist anywhere. It reflects the sunlight. Sunlight reflects the small, grain of not grain. It's a small drop of moisture, and reflect it to the human eye. So yes, sir. Please.
Feelings are illusion, sadness,
Yeah.
joy.
I say yes. Why? Because the feeling is concept. Otherwise, if you have no concept, you don't know, you don't feel anything. So real feeling is not real existence. With what you feel? Mind or sense?
If I respond to a loss of something, and do I deny the feeling, the response?
No, not necessary to deny it. It is it. Don't deny it. That is, denial is another, illusion. So affirmation is another, illusion. So everything must be as it is, such.
And that leads me to believe there's stoicism, though.
Huh?
That leads me to believe that there is stoicism. In other words, not responding to a loss of a friend or not having a feeling arise. I understand what you're saying in terms of the
Yeah.
concept, in terms of the dualistic.
Yes, surely. Then,
Then thinking about just being in the world, living in the world and responding to something like that,
Yeah.
be it joy or be it sadness,
Uh-huh.
is a natural response that I think everybody in the room would share in a moment.
yeah, respond from one person to the other.
Yes.
Oh, it is impossible. because your feeling cannot, transmit from one person to other. When I feel this is very pretty, can you feel my feeling?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I bring the apple. Okay,
You what?
one apple. Okay, I bring my apple and start to eat. I feel, but do you feel this apple? Taste of the apple? Of course not. Now, feeling is like this, intransmittable, or transmissible. And human thought is also same thing.
Yet if we can't live independently of each other, like the flower needs the earth.
Flower is
The flower needs the earth, people need other people. It
Yeah.
seems like there is some transmission going on.
Do you exchange your understanding with this flower?
In my own way, yes.
Can you exchange your feeling with the flower?
Exchange the feeling.
Person, if I can exchange, but really we can't. We can't exchange my feeling, between you and I. In the social world, we understand each other, But that is, that customary saying, But, not, it is not really, true, not true.
It almost seems contradictory then
Yeah, contradictory. Yeah.
to a Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah, no, Buddhist, if you understand it is contradictory, you never attach it. If you do not attach it, it doesn't bother you. Yeah, or contradiction, or illusion, or ignorance, and conceit, you know, that's all kind of vices or even virtues does not you know, harm or help any person because they are empty. They are an illusion. There is no real things in the whole universe. Something wrong? Yes, sir.
Example might, if you could talk about it, is if you hold your hand
Yeah.
over a flame,
Yeah.
okay, your stove, it's going.
Money? Yes, sir.
Here's a little sheet.
Yeah, continue.
And you hold it over the flame, and your hand
Yeah.
hurts, okay, it's burning. Your hand.
Yeah, yeah,
And you're feeling suffering, okay,
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
The notion that is a little doubtful is that's not real,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But you're supposed to do something about it.
Yeah,
You leave your hand there, it burns up.
yeah,
So you bring it back.
Yeah.
Your concept
yeah.
of suffering and pain is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't stop you from pulling your hand back or responding
Mm-hmm.
to whatever's going on. But you don't have to think it's real
Mm-hmm.
or conceptualize it to pull your hand back. So
That's
it's
true.
not stoic.
Yeah,
The stoic is just going to have to leave it there and say, well, you know, who cares?
that's
Kind
true.
of thing. But
That's true.
you react,
Yeah,
but you don't need to conceptualize to react.
yeah. Do you know what is that? That or why it is that man do that? You know, when we put a hand on the fire, we drew it back. Okay, that is habitual power.
What?
Habitual power, customary. You know.
Habitual.
Like
Yeah.
karma?
Huh?
Some kind of karma?
Yeah, it is karma. Because people, have many occasions and experience, such kind of conduct, before, because we know fire may damage everything, burn down, So
Baby though, baby's like this. You put a baby.
baby doesn't know that.
He
No,
doesn't bring back.
no, no.
He just
Ba-
leaves it there.
Baby doesn't afraid of because he doesn't know or baby doesn't know the danger of the fire. No. It is customary karma.
Huh.
People, grown people knows it is the fire is very dangerous. No? When it feel fire, draw up, draw back. It is spontaneous, habit, habitual power. Yeah. It is not wisdom, not maybe wisdom we say, but it is not knowledge. It is habitual. Just like when we practice music, violin or the piano, and we master it, and get skill. We can play without knowing, like that. Customarily, habitually, we can do that. Just the same thing. Yeah. Yes, sir. Please.
If there are no decisions to make in the world, are
Yeah, not necessary to decide. No. It is spontaneously we know,
it reveals itself.
yeah, danger. Yeah, spontaneous, because we repeat it, accumulate our, idea or habit, habitual, concept. I have many times, in the past time, I had this kind of experiences. So I know fire is very dangerous. So when I feel some, heat, hotness, we the must, that's how to say, prevent myself from the high, heat. That is, that's habitual, our habitual. Yeah. Understandable? Yeah. Okay, so let's see this paper. This myo namu is adoration or belief. We put our mind, concentrated. Then put our mind on that, teaching or some doctrines, That is kind, meaning of nam. Nam is a Sanskrit term. Sometimes we call om. Om, om, om. Nam, nam, nam. Same, meaning. And yoga, school, they chant om, not nam, mostly. But in Buddhism, some Shingon schools, there are many mantra started from om, om, om. But the other scriptures, most of the time it is nam. Then, or this side, that myo, that is wonderful, that is amazing, it is very subtle. I don't know which is a good one. Wonderful, In this book, it translates into wonderful. The Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Law. That is, name of the book. Myo is very wonderful. Everything is so wonderful. This is wonderful. Why? It is unconceivable. But you can conceive it. You can conceive it. This is a plant. Okay? But what is plant? I don't know. This is, as this is. So everything is like this. That is myo, wonderfulness. Ho is Dharma. Dharma is existences. All existences are called Dharma. In Sanskrit, the term of Dharma is that which has own nature or characteristics. Is Dharma. Something, which has own characteristics or self-existences, is Dharma. And I declared it, or I explained it like this. First one, equality or identity. This plant is identical to this flower. But the human mind is dualistic. So they are looking for the difference or differentiation, between this one and this one. So human knowledge is always, trying to find a definition. What is plant? Plant is so and so, What is a flower? Flower has this kind of nature, this kind of color. This is a kind of shape. This is a kind of characteristic. So they find out definition. They never try to find out equality. That is human knowledge. So human knowledge is not, a wonderfulness. So number 2 is suchness. This plant is such. No one can affirm it or negate it. So it is not existent, not non-existent. It is not good, not bad, not pretty, not ugly. No? All this kind of characteristics, human, that's understanding or feeling. No, don't use, your own feeling or own understanding when you see everything. Everything is just like that. Everything is like that. That is suchness. Okay, number 3 is the Buddha nature. What is Buddha nature? It is enlightened nature. That is called Buddha nature. Buddha was an enlightened person. Therefore, enlightenment is a universal nature. Everything in the universe are enlightened. But very few people understand. Only Buddha can understand. The Bodhisattva never understand that. Okay? The Bodhisattva has a practice, Bodhisattva's practice. But that Bodhisattva's mind is always dualistic. Buddha is up, and the human being is lower, stages. And the Bodhisattva exists between the Buddha and the human being. So their mind is always dualistic. And the wisdom of Bodhisattva is also dualistic. It's called prajna paramita. Prajna paramita means the wisdom of crossing over from this shore to the other shore of the Buddha. So that is dualistic. Instead of that, Buddha's wisdom is, perfectly equal, equal enlightened. Buddha never, other people are not enlightened. He never says so. Everything is the same enlightened nature. That is Buddha's point of view. This wisdom is, that sarva jnana. Sarva jnana. Equal, the wisdom of equality. That is sarva jnana, not paramita, prajna paramita. Prajna paramita is like a people, human beings, always thinking they are human beings. They have ignorance, desires, selfish desires, and anger and greed and attachment and all kind of illusions. And they wish to attain to higher stage, perfect, completion stages. That is Buddhahood, perfect enlightenment. But this kind of people never be attained. Because the dualistic mind cannot attain to the other shore. I show you, I explain to you some example. Some people, love peace and hate some strife, or war, some kind of fighting. So they like peace, sentiment, that's just in their sentiment. So I love say, peace. Give me peace. Give me peace. They are sometimes demonstrate on the street. This kind of people are not, their mind is not, peaceful. Because they don't know real peace, meaning of real peace. Peace is everywhere, anywhere in the world. On this table, in your mind, under your foot. No, peace is everywhere. But they do understand peace is somewhere quietness, no tragedies, no fighting, no argument, no strifes. But that is not a peace. Concept of peace cannot arise by itself without strife or violence. Violence and peace must be one. But the dualistic people never understand that. Okay? If they the wish to, or realize the peaceful world, they slow forget the peaceful mind. No? So everywhere is peaceful. No? Peaceful is a mental state, not worldly affair. They misunderstand the meaning of the peace. Those people always try to everywhere make east. I hate west, and I like east. So I like this place is east. This place is east, but it is impossible. East and west is only concept. Okay, peace and strife is a concept. Violence and suffering is a concept. Human concept is an illusion. True peace is unknowable. No? Your mind is peaceful, everything becomes peaceful. Okay? When you know, this is peaceful, this is peace. That is, big, that's strife. No? I explained before, that when I have no trouble in my body, I don't know where I have a body. But once I have trouble in my body, I remind, I have a stomach here. I have pain in my stomach. That is, troublesome. Just like that. This, forgetfulness. When we have no idea, no concept, that is a proof of perfection. Yes. So, and next is enlightenment. Everything is enlightened by itself, perfect. Nirvana and enlightenment are same meaning. Sometimes we call it nirvana. Sometimes we call it enlightenment. Enlightenment is a mental state. And nirvana is the realm, name of the quiet realm. And the tranquility, that is nirvana. And the peaceful land, that is Buddha land, different name of Buddha land. And blissfulness, happiness, that is, another name of the Buddha's, land. And whole is Dharma, existences. Everything is called Dharma, existences or entities, realities. But that's terminologically, how say that's literally, it has a different meaning, because it is each languages started from the certain places, so it has a local culture, local understanding. And everything is not equal, but not different. It's a very, human mind is always, differ, discriminate. They are different or they are same, like that. But it is impossible for the people to do that. Because human, knowing, understanding is only conceptual, making a concept, that's all. All human judgment are mistaken, Why? Because, when we judge something, we must compare, two things or many things. This comparison must be impossible. No? Do you, can you compare these flowers to flowers? Almost the same kind, okay? Same kind of flower. But, that I don't know, what this flower is. Even existence or existent or non-existent. Because color is my understanding, my feeling. This shape is my understanding. If I have no concept, it has nothing. There is no flower here. It is only projection of my concept. Therefore, is this real existence? No. It is not it is non-existence? No. No. We cannot affirm it, we cannot negate it. What shall we do? How do we grasp it, understand it? Everything is like this. We cannot compare these things. If they are quite different, we cannot compare. If they are quite the same each other, we cannot compare. This one thing is quite the same. So I cannot compare one flower. When I bring another flower, these flowers are quite different against each other. How do we compare? Same color? No. Same shape? Or same name? Same name? No. Because name is, that's a group, name of the group, not the individual, name. This one, one flower has a name? No. And the name is, all, that's same types of flowers. Therefore, name is, the group name. That is concept. It is not actual flower. So we cannot compare anything. Therefore, we cannot, judge or decide which is beautiful, which is real, which is truth, what is, The comparison is impossible. Therefore, judgment is impossible. So all human understanding are impossible. When you understand that, you can understand it, okay, you can understand everything, but you cannot attach to your understanding. Because human understanding is not real, not true. Yes, sir.
If you can't judge or decide, then do you use faith or belief?
Faith and that is a little different aspect. That is feeling. Of course, feeling is a concept. But the feeling is out of reason. So sometimes, I say, I can say, oh, I like a boss. I like a boss. That is feeling. So in the feeling, that we don't need any discrimination. I like this one, better than this. That is feeling. So discriminated with feeling, or I understand both equally. That is a feeling. But all feeling are conceptual. Therefore, that it is not real. There is no real feeling anywhere. Because concept of feeling is not feeling. Yeah. It is, very difficult point. Yeah. Concept of understanding is not real. Concept of feeling is not real. When you are cut off your finger with a knife, you have pain. Okay. So you think, where this pain come from? You don't know. Is it my pain or others' pain? You don't know. Where is my concept of my pain? No? There is no pain, concept of pain in your brain, in your heart, in other functioning. So what is pain? No? Pain is unknowable. No? And pain is only conceptual. You have an image, mental image of pain in your mind. That image comes from your past experiences, no? Memories. If you have no memory, you have no pain, anything. No? Someone, by accident, lost his past memory. He know nothing. Even he cut his finger, he has no pain. Yeah. So he doesn't know whose pain is that. He doesn't know his name. He is a man. He is a living person. Nothing. He knows nothing. Okay? So he has no happiness, no suffering, no pain, no pleasure. Memory is so important. It is a source of all concept. Yeah. Okay, that's you see next one, human nature and Buddha nature are same but different. That is wonderfulness. If it is the same, it is not wonderfulness. If they are quite different, they are not wonderfulness, because they have no connection between Buddha nature and the human nature. They are not the same, not different. That is very wonderful. And the passion and the enlightenment are like that. Same as the same. You know. So, passion is not different from enlightenment. Because when there is no enlightenment, there is no passion. When there is no enlightenment, there is no passion, and vice versa. When there is no passion, there is no enlightenment. No? So, Buddha has no enlightenment. Some people say, Buddha is enlightened. That is a human point of view, dualistic point of view. Buddha is the beyond, from enlightenment or nirvana. Human think, everything is dualistic. Buddha has compassion and deep compassion and great wisdom. That is human point of view of the Buddha. Buddha has nothing. And the Buddha has everything. Everything and nothing are the same meaning in the oneness world. But in the human world, they are quite opposite against each other. That is a dualistic world. And the transmigration and the nirvana, quiescence. That is same but different. Buddha said it is same, but the people said they are quite different. And the peaceful land and the suffering world are the same but different. People understand it, the two worlds, different worlds. But the Buddha is, always knows. He knows equality between suffering and happiness. Therefore, they are, one. No difference. But if he say no difference, that is concept. Okay. Therefore, the Buddha go to hell. Okay, that is the last one is already suffering, Okay, and rain is lotus and flower. Lotus and flower. Lotus is a plant. It is cause of the flower. And also the flower is the cause, and the lotus plant is the effect. It is vice versa. Okay? Fruit is not always effect. Fruit has a seed in it. Okay? That is the cause of plants. Cause, that embracing the effect in it. Effect, embracing causes in it. So they are embracing each other, mutual embracement. I think you know the lotus flower in the tropical country. It is so beautiful. But in that, flower, the already seed in it. So in that seed, that will produce the next branch of lotus. So lotus and flower, plant and flower are just like cause and effect. These are depend on each other like that. So that is very wonderfulness. Yeah. So it is the simile, example. or simile of the wonderfulness, seed and flower, and ignorance and wisdom, undeveloped and perfection, and immatureness. It is not so important. And the last, Kyo, that is a sutra, doctrine. Sutra is like a cross, that when we see the cross, it has two kind of fibers. One is vertical, the other is horizontal, like this, like that. So it can make a cross. This is the Chinese character of Kyo. That is the name of a cloth. So Myo and Ho make a cloth, and lotus and the flower make a cloth. So this is the world. Buddha's world and the human world are just like a cloth, like this. One but two, two but one. So this is the whole teaching of this Saddharma Pundarika Sutra. In the other world, that the Buddha attained to the equal enlightenment. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. That is utmost or supreme, equal, and perfect enlightenment. That is, that is Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. That is this sutra, whole sutra. He explained his complete enlightenment in this sutra. So this is very difficult to understand. Then we chant it. We make it a sutra, how to say, that dharani or mantra, a small mystical verse. That is called mantra or dharani. Dharani. Mantra is used by Hinduism most of the time. In Buddhism, they used as dharani. Dharani. So it's it's okay. We can use both. Because it is only sound. So we chant Nam Myo Ho Renge Kyo. That means we are enlightened. We are same to the Buddha. This world is oneness world. Buddha and we are everything. That is meaning of chanting. So not we will be enlightened in the future time. No. Time is a big illusion. Time never moves, changes. All the time is now. It doesn't change. Always present, but present has no time. It is the just border or boundary of the future and the past. I don't know which is the future. This is the future, this is the past. So this is very that no boundary. It is no time up now. So time is illusion. If there is no present, there is no past. There is no future. Okay? So time, people, that like Einstein said, time is actual being. But it is not so. It is scientific, realism, realistic idea. How about the space? Space is also, it is concept. So there is no real things in the whole universe. But there is no unreal things in the universe. We must be free, quite free from all kind of concept. That is a true middle path, true doctrine of suchness. So there is no enlightenment. Enlightenment is a big illusion. So when you chant this kind of chanting, you don't aim. You don't aim anything because you have everything with you. Okay? Enlightenment, nirvana, and everything. So, that's you are the eternal Buddha. In the past you are the Buddha, and in the future you will be the Buddha. At now you are the Buddha. So you don't need to practice anything. If you need to practice something, that is dualism. Yes, so. Okay, then, try to chant it. Okay, try to chant it. When we chant it, I show you. This is a mandala, Gohonzon. I drew it long time ago. So this is, in the center, it is Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. That is complete, equal enlightenment, perfect enlightenment. This is this kind. It has, this is light of enlightenment, shining everything, from the Buddha to the hell, all being in the hell. For instance, this is, Devadatta, his cousin. He tried to kill the cousin of Buddha. But when he heard this sutra, he became the teacher or instructor of the Buddha. So he didn't fall to the hell. And many things, that's like that. Or I just say he killed his mother and father. He was the king of Magadha at the Buddha's time. He was a disciple of not the parishioner of the Buddha. But he was so a cruel person, cruel king. But he should fall to the hell. But with this sutra, he became the Buddha. So all mankind, and so all this is human being. I think that is this is the heavenly creatures. This is the hungry devil, hell, animal mind. I think all this is but But all the, the beings from the Buddha to hell are the concept, not the real, actual beings. This is, the light is the enlightenment of the Buddha. And also, this title of this the sutra, it is like a light, shine everything, make them gold, golden color, Buddha's color, enlightened color. So when we imagine, make a picture in our mind, this is samadhi, samadhi. This samadhi must be a kind of meditation. Then we make a gasho, that is a mudra, we say. This is a custom of the India, Burma, and southern Asian country. Very, very old custom. When we salute others, we put two hands together and bow like that. So this is we have many other things like that. We have many 10 different mudra. But among those mudra, this is the strongest, powerful mudra. When you make this mudra, no temptation can approach to that person. So this is very, very strong, mudra. So when you chant this title or mantra, you make a mudra with your body, and you concentrate your mind in the Buddha's rhythm. That is this, Gohonzon, or mandala, we say. Mandala. So we chant it. That is the Buddha's conduct, not the Bodhisattva's conduct. So it is quite different from in meditation, or prana paramita. I like to explain how different, this kind of practice, Buddha's conduct, and Buddha's practice, and the Bodhisattva's practice, prana paramita we call. We have 6 paramita, 8 paramita, 10 paramita. That is, the conduct of the Bodhisattva, not the Buddha's conduct. But most of people do not know. Then meditation is a Buddha's conduct. In that meaning, everything is a Buddha's conduct. Okay? Sleeping, talking, jealousing, and joking, and lying, killing, all are Buddha's conduct. So, that killing and adultering is not Buddha's conduct, That's why Bodhisattva's conduct is not Buddha's conduct. I explain it. I, introduce you the Buddha's conduct. One Buddha exists in whole this world. There is only one person, who is enlightened. All other person, beings, is also enlightened with him. If you individually, you are not enlightened, nothing, no Buddha, no Bodhisattva in this whole universe. Okay? Your mind is so important. Your mind is the universe. Yeah. So purify your mind You must realize the enlightenment. You are enlightenment. Already Buddha, Gautama Buddha or Shakyamuni Buddha, show us the example. He was enlightened and he said, oh, I see everything is enlightened. He saw others' enlightenment. At that time, he looked back himself. Oh, then I must be the Buddha, enlightened being. When you purify your mind, the world becomes purified. Unless that there is no purified, Buddha land anywhere. There is no Buddha anywhere. You can make, produce all Buddha in that three world and in the past, future, and present. This is the three periods of our world, and 10 directions of world. 10 directions we have, east, west, south, north, and between that, 8 directions, and up and down. Altogether, there are 10 directions. That is a spatial world. We have a three-dimensional period. That is a timely world. So this is including whole world. I am the creator of the whole Buddha's world. That is your realization must be. It must be your realization, not the Buddha's realization. That is, that's a true Buddhism. No other Buddhism exists. Please, think of that. Everything is depend on you. Your mind is defiled. Your mind is full of illusions. All other people have illusions and no chance to be enlightened. Yes, please, understand it. And chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, by yourself. That is the conduct of the Buddha. Universal Buddha, eternal Buddha, that is your, things, your conduct. Buddha was enlightened a long time ago, beginningless beginning. And you must be enlightened right now. Time is no difference. Past and present and the future is one, same, no difference. Now we are the world of self, myself, yourself. You must be enlightened. You must accomplish your enlightenment. Then world become enlightened with you. You are the Buddha now, not you are the Buddha of the past and the future. Future Buddha will come, somebody will come. But your Buddha is now, just living now. You must have the responsibility to be enlightened right now. Then all other, the Buddhas, all beings become the Buddha instantly with you. That is, the truth of wonderful, law of the. Okay, this is, please look at this, or this one, the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Law, truth, So this is very important. This is a conclusive sutra of the Buddha, Shakyamuni. Yes, sir.
That's the last one you wrote.
Last one?
That's the last one.
Yeah. No, of course, after this, the Buddha taught, when he entered the Nirvana, the Mahapali Nirvana Sutra. That was the last one. Yeah. But, it is only, very short time when he, died. He taught the Mahapali Nirvana Sutra. But the idea are the same. Idea is the same to this one. One Buddha's enlightenment.
Could you pass that around so we can see it?
Okay, sure. I put it, all I put, the soil, please. If you like to have, I have several books, in my study. It costs $10. Today, ordinary bookstore, it costs $15. But this is not $20 book, but only paperback. So if you like it, I share it. I don't know how many, 6 or not more than 10, 6, 7, 8 books I have. Yeah, if you go to some bookstore, ask them, I think some in Palo Alto, there are 2 bookstores, East and West bookstore. They must have. Okay, any questions so far? This is very active. Okay, before the Buddha was enlightened under the Bodhi tree, he practiced meditation for 6 years, full 6 years. But he couldn't be enlightened. End of that term, he sat under the Bodhi tree and sat 21 days under the Bodhi tree. And on the day, early morning of December 8th, he opened, the eyes, recollected from the deep meditation. At that time, he saw the morning star in the eastern sky. At that time, all his illusion was gone. And he looked around and saw everything was enlightened, perfect figure. So he said, how wonderful everything is, just like complete figure, like a Buddha. At that time, he look at him. Then I, am the same. This is my enlightenment. All others' enlightenment is his enlightenment. That was the Buddha's equal enlightenment. He became the Buddha. Buddha's enlightenment is not personal enlightenment, individual enlightenment. No. His enlightenment is universal enlightenment, and eternal enlightenment. Everything in the past, future, and the present are enlightened with him. That is only the enlightenment. You must attain to this enlightenment, otherwise it is not Buddhism. Practice meditation is only, the practice of bodhisattva. And prajna paramita is only, wisdom of bodhisattva, not, perfect enlightenment, wisdom. Any question, please? This is a very important point. You must be the Buddha right now, okay? Not in the future, not in the past. You are, the Buddha in the past world. But, just you forgot it. Yeah, if you understand, this is the greatest, the, profit for you. Yeah. Yes.
Why would one forget something so important?
So important? Because that is your problem. In the sutra, this is a parable. There was a lady, in India. She was very poor, but she had a big, the garden and the old house. But she had no money, no treasure, no food. He thought herself were very poor woman. But he has had a very wise friend. That she came sometimes and told her, you are not, you are not supposed to be so poor, because your ancestor had a big wealth, hidden, somewhere in your garden. I would find out, your dear wealth for you. Then that wise lady look around the garden. Oh, this is a place. You dig it. Okay, then she dig it to the ground. Oh, there was a big, how to say, the pot. Ancient India, they hidden, the money or treasures in the ground. In the pot, awesome pot. So he became the wealthy lady. Just like that. People think they are very humble. They are poor and ignorant. Because they forget. They are forgetting their true value, that nature. So everybody should find out own true nature and true wealth. Just like that. So Dogen, Zen master in Japan. He was born in 1200. Went to China and brought Zen teaching back to Japan. But he never say his school was Zen school. Meditation is only in a method. He was, the Buddha. He thought. Enlightenment. Buddha's teaching, the most essential teaching is enlightenment. Everybody is enlightened from the beginning. That is the true teaching of the Buddha, not meditation. So he didn't allow his disciples, to call his school was Zen school. If you say Zen school to my school, that is, you must be the disciple of the heavenly Mala, that is, how to say, Papiya. Papiya is Mala's king. You must be a retinue of the Papiyas. So even Dogen did not allow the student to call his school Zen school. Zen is not an essential principle of the Buddhism. But many people misunderstand. Even Zen student, misunderstand it. Dogen said in his writing, that he wrote 100, commentaries. We call it Shobo Genzo. In the chapter of 49, Buddha's Way, in that chapter, he explained like that. My disciple never called our school Zen school, meditation school. No, because meditation is not essential principle of the Buddhism. No, he said. Then people should know that. But they call it, this is Zen meditation. This is Zen Shu. Zen Shu is Zen school. No, the Dogen himself prohibited to call, such a foolish name. There is many meditation. In Hinayanam Buddhism, they have meditation. Mahayanam schools, they have meditation. But it is only preparation, dualistic practice. Not a practice of enlightenment. But I don't like to say these kind of things, because then people, may get the heart, they are feeling. Yeah. So if they ask me, I tell them anytime. Yeah. So, you are enlightened from the, in the past, in the future, up to now. And Buddha is you, not, others. There is no Buddha without you. Okay? Some other, Buddhists think Buddha is only, person who was enlightened. No, that is a big illusion. Okay? You make a Buddha enlightened, to be enlightened. Unless you are enlightened, there is no Buddha anywhere. Okay? That is the main point. And when you are enlightened, everybody, everything, that to be enlightened with you. You are the owner, how say, you are the essence of the enlightenment. If there is no, you are enlightenment, there is no enlightenment outside of you. There is no enlightened person. There is no Buddha anywhere. So that in this book, in this Lotus Sutra, Buddha was enlightened, beginningless beginning. But no Buddhist understand that. Even them people do not know. They chant, this sutra, some part, this sutra in their ceremony. But they never understand the meaning of that sutra. He was enlightened, beginningless beginning, that's chapter 16. They chant, that same phrase, all the time, but never understand it. Yeah, chapter 16, yeah. Okay, chapter 16, it says, that the Buddha's enlightenment is okay, that's wonderful. That's the next page. Okay, here. I think that would you read it? Please, would you read it? My English is not so good. Yeah, from here, all the way, dolphin. Yeah, loudly, please.
All the worlds of God, men, and asuras consider. Now has Sakai Muni,
Shakyamuni, yeah, Shakyamuni,
Buddha come forth from the place of the Sakaya
Shaka castle,
clan,
that is Shaka clan, that is the name of the tribe of Shaka, Shakyamuni. So we call him Shaka, the name of clan. Shaka Muni is on the most respective, person. Shakyamuni, Shaka clan.
and seated at the training place of enlightenment, not far from the city of Gaya, and has attained to perfect enlightenment. But my good sons, since I veritably became Buddha, in parentheses, there have passed infinite, boundless, hundreds, thousands, myriads of
kotis
of
Nayuta
of kalpas.
Yeah, kalpas. Kalpa is a long term of time. Kalpa.
For instance, suppose there were 500,000 myriad kotis of Nayutas of Asamkai
Yeah, Asankaya. Yeah.
3,000 great thousandfold worlds.
Yeah, it's very difficult, that terminology is very difficult, yeah.
Let someone grind them to atoms, pass eastward through 500,000 myriads of kotis, of nayutas, of asamki.
Unclear?
Yeah,
That's very difficult.
countries,
Yeah, countries.
and then drop one of those atoms, and then drop one of
Oh,
those.
okay. Thank you. I explained by myself, you know. It is not, it's very difficult. This sounds very fun, you know. So, thank you.
So,
You know, that it is so long times, you know, he became enlightened, you know. It was, you know, that, you know, you know, so long time like that. The people make this whole universe make up of dust, you know, it's a piece of dust. And when he goes to the eastern way, you know, quarter, many thousands of myriad of quarters, countries, which means it's many 100,000 million billions of countries, and put one dust there, okay, and go to east, you know, east, and another million of billion of quarters of Kalpas country, put another dust. You know? Then when that dust, you know, extinguish, how to say, waste up, you know? And then put whole countries, put dust or not, you know, make a dust, and count one dust as 1 hour, 1 year, or 1 kalpa, you know. That is, how to say, the countless, you know, so many countless numbers of kalpa. Now, kalpa itself is a very large number. You know? There was a big 40 miles square of town, and full of poppy seed. There is a cricket, one cricket. They, you know, he bring the one seed every year, you know, out of town, and waste, you know, waste all, you know, poppy seeds. That is 1 kalpa. That is a countless, you know, number. So anyway, that's an endless beginning, and a beginningless beginning, you know. Okay, do you have any question? This is a, you know, you are very lucky, you know, no one here, this kind of things. You know, that at first, I started last time, you know, I declared, revealed this kind of unusual teaching, you know. After long explanation of Buddhism, I started from 7 months ago, from the February, you know, beginning of February, I started here, you know. But I didn't tell anybody this kind of important teaching, you know, because they couldn't understand. Yeah. So Buddha spent 45 years, you know, until he declared this kind of profound teaching. You know, that's Saddharma Pundarika Sutra. When he started to teach he was at 72, 2 years. Until that, he declared or he expounded many other sutras, Hinayanan teaching and Mahayanan teaching. This is so important. But if you have a conceited mind, you never understand it. No. It says, Yes, ma'am.
Should one chant as much as possible?
Okay. Okay, I chant it.
No, but I mean, we should chant as every time we can?
Yeah, that is 3 times and 7 times, 10 times. Sometimes in Japan, many people are chanting 100 times. But they are very busy today, so it is 3 times. 3 times, 7 times, 10 times. That's enough. Yeah. They every time, that they chant when they start to eat, some meal. They chant Nammyo Ho Renge Kyo, Nammyo Ho Renge Kyo, Nammyo Ho Renge Kyo. Then they start to eat. And someone say, when they telephone to the friend, they at first he said, Nammyo Ho Renge Kyo, hello. Yeah. Okay, when you have any question, please ask me, bring me, And
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
Does Buddhism believe in a hell?
Pardon me?
Is there a hell in Buddhism?
Hell. Hell?
Hell, yes.
Oh, is there hell?
The concept of hell
Uh-huh. Yeah.
in Buddhism.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah, there is. We have 10, stages of the mental stages. One is Buddha, Bodhisattva second, and Pratyeka Buddha third, Shravaka fourth, and the heavenly beings, Deva we call, that is fifth. And human beings are sixth. And Ashura is a competition mind. It's the same, that is human mental stage. Some human beings are like a competition, gamble and competition. And that is, better than animal mind. Animal mind is 7, just a minute, 7, 6, 7, 8. 8 is animal mind. 9, from the bottom and from the top, that is the hungry spirit. Hungry spirit. That is a demon or some demon, And the last one is hell. That is angry spirit. Angry. He is the being which is always angry. Angry. Yeah. He is in anger. So when people have anger in their mind, they kill anybody. Anger is the worst, bad, worst nature or character, disposition. Next, greedy. Next, ignorance. Anger, greedy, and ignorant. Ignorance. That is worst 3.
Ignorance is the same as competition?
Competition, yeah, competition is Ashura, Ashura.
And it's the same as ignorance?
Of course. That's, the last three, that is the three washed, the realm. Then Ashura and human, the nature is attachment. People attached to anything, very greedy, not like a glue, gluey, attachment. Yes, ma'am?
Can you say again what the third and fourth ones were?
Huh?
The third and fourth?
Fourth is from the top. That is Shuravaka. Shuravaka. Shura, Suravaka. Shuravaka is that's philosopher. They have knowledge, much knowledge, but little wisdom.
And the third one?
Third one is Pracheka Buddha. Pracheka Buddha. P R-A, pra, teacher, T-I-T-Y-A, pra, teacher, Buddha. Buddha is small character. And the second one, Bodhisattva, enlightened being. But this enlightenment is dualistic enlightenment, not a perfect enlightenment.
What's dualistic enlightenment?
Yeah.
What is that?
Oh, it is very contradictory,
It's almost being
Yeah. Yeah. It is conceptual, enlightenment. All human concepts are dualistic. And each stages have another 10 stages. Altogether, it's 100. I have more, that's a complicated classification, but I like to omit it. Ancient time, they had much time, but today everybody is so busy. We have no such complicated philosophy. We don't need that. Yeah. That you trust the Buddha's enlightenment, so you are able to be enlightened. It is not your ability. Buddha showed us his enlightenment. He, accumulated his virtue, virtuous conduct, so many years, and he at last achieved enlightenment. But now, we don't need any, kind of practice. Buddha's enlightenment, showed us our own enlightenment. So we trust his enlightenment. That is true. This belief is important. We don't know, we cannot understand, Buddha's enlightenment. But he said, everything is so wonderful, that everything